Hello students, today we'll be working on review of factoring part 2. I have already highlighted the numbers we're working on today. Let's begin. So number 2, we have m squared plus 7mn plus 2m plus 14n. Notice here that we have 4 monomials in here, which means we can't use our normal method that we've been using. So we're going to go ahead and use the grouping method. So let's go ahead and separate these two pieces real quick. This is going to be one of our pieces. This can be our second piece. So from the first piece, what is the greatest common factor that we can remove? Since there's no n in the first one and the coefficient here is 1, all we can take out is m. Well, when we take that out, we have to divide m squared by m, which gives us m. 7mn divided by m is 7n. And now the second piece, 2m plus 14n. What is the biggest number that we can take out of that? The GCF, I mean. Well, let's look at m and n. Those are two different variables, so that we can't take either of those out. And what about 2 and 14, though? We can take out a 2, which leaves us with m plus 7n. And now, to check if our work is correct, we look at our answers inside the parentheses, and is m plus 7n equal to m plus 7n? Yes, it is, which means we did our work correctly so far. So now, we're going to combine these, which gives us m plus 2 and m plus 7n. And that is going to be the answer. Let's try number 6 now. Okay, so number 6 is 8w to the power of 5 minus 48w to the power of 4 plus 72w to the power of 3. And when we want to find, now we need to find the GCF of these three monomials. And to do that, we're going to just pick the smallest number out of these. So we have w to the power of 5, w to the power of 4, and w to the power of 3. The biggest one we'd be able to take out is w to the power of 3. Let me rewrite this a little bit to the side. And 8, 4, negative 48, and 72. They are all divisible by 8, so we can remove an 8 out of that. So if we divide 8w to the power of 5 by 8w to the power of 3, we're left with what? We're left with w to the power of 2. And then if we divide the second piece by our GCF, we're left with negative 6w. And 72w to the power of 3 divided by 8w to the power of 3 leaves us with positive 9. And from here, we're able to factor. Let me erase this over here. Okay. From here, we can factor this piece right here. On the top, we have 9. On the bottom, we have negative 6. Now, what are the factors? What factors would give us multiply to 9, but add up to negative 6? That would be negative 3 and negative 3. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9, but if you add negative 3 and negative 3, you are left with negative 6. So we can create our equation out of this, w minus 3 and w minus 3. And remember, we need to put something in the front. We need to bring back our GCF that we pulled out earlier. And that will be the answer. Let's move on to number... Oh, I think I skipped number 4. Yeah, let's go back to number 4 now. Number 4 is 3x squared minus 4x plus 9xy minus 12y. Here we're going to group again. Group the first two and group the last two together. So we have 3x squared minus 4x. What is the greatest common factor between these two? It will be just x. So we're going to pull that out, and we're going to divide 3x squared by x. And when we do that, 3x squared divided by x is 3x. And negative 4x divided by x is just negative 4. And now let's work on the second piece. 9xy minus 12xy. What is the GCF between these two monomials? It will be, let's look at the coefficients first. Our coefficients are 9 and negative 12. So among the coefficients, the biggest number we can take out would be 3. Now let's look at our variables. We have xy and y. The biggest coefficient we could take out of that would be y. So inside we're going to be left with, when you divide out 3y, 9xy divided by 3y is going to be 3x. And we have negative 12y divided by 3y, which is negative 4, just negative 4. And again, to check our answer, we're going to look at our answers inside the parentheses. Is 3x minus 4 equal to 3x minus 4? Yes, it is. That means we did our work correctly so far. Now we're going to group these together, and we're left with x plus 3y and 3x minus 4. And that will be our answer. Let's move on to number 10 now. Number 10 is x to the power of 3 plus 2x squared minus 49x minus 98. We're going to go ahead and group these again and find the GCF once again. Go ahead and pause the video and try it yourself at this point. The GCF from the first section is just x squared. So if we pull that out, we need to divide that whole section. So we're left with x plus 2. Let's try the second section. The GCF is going to be, this one's a little trickier, right? Negative 49x and negative 98. You would assume that it might be 3 or 9, but it's actually negative 49. And remember, we need to pull the negative out of there. We don't want a negative in the front. So we're going to pull that negative out with the 49. And now we're left with negative 49x divided by negative 49, which is just positive x. And negative 98 divided by negative 49 is going to be positive 2. And once again, check our answer by looking inside the parentheses. X plus 2 is equal to x plus 2, so we did our work correctly. So now, let's group these together. X squared minus 49 and x plus 2. Are we done with our work here? Nope, we are not. Notice that there is an x to the second power minus 49. That means there's still more work to be done. From here, we're going to use our methods again. Remember, there are two different methods we can use. I'm going to go ahead and use the Xbox method for now. Since there is no b in here, we're going to assume it's 0. And we're going to put negative 49 up here. So what two numbers multiply to negative 49, but give us, when they're added together, give us 0? 7 and negative 7. Now we can rewrite this as x minus 7, x plus 7. Are we done now? Not quite. We need to bring this x plus 2 down. And that is our answer. Let's move on to 14 now. 3q to the power of 3 minus 5q to the power of 2 minus 27q plus 45 is equal to 0. And you guessed it, we're going to be doing grouping once again. So let's figure out what the GCF is of each piece. What is the greatest common factor we can remove from the first part? It'll just be q squared. So we're left with 3q minus 5. And from the second piece, the greatest common factor is 9. But notice that there's a negative 27q. So we need to take that negative out. So we're left with negative 9. 3q plus 5 is equal to 0. Oh, I made a mistake in here. Let me fix that. Remember, when you take a negative out, you're going to have to flip the signs in the entire binomial. 5 is equal to 0. And the way you can check it once again is to see if your answers are correct inside the parentheses. If the answer is correct, that means you did your work correctly. Now, from here, we're going to group these again. Q squared minus 9 and 3q minus 5 is equal to 0. Notice that it says equal to 0, which means we're going to eventually have to figure out what q is equal to. Once again, notice that q squared, we're left with q squared minus 9, which means our work is not done yet. And in case you forgot, we can use this formula over here. Do it in a different color. We can use this formula to help us out. A squared minus b squared is equal to a plus b, a minus b. So, knowing that q squared minus 9, q would be our a, and 9 would be our b? Not quite. It's going to have to be 3 squared. So the 3 is going to be equal to b. So when we rewrite our equation, it will look like this. Our a is q, and our b is 3. So we can write it like this. Q plus 3 and q minus 3 times 3q minus 5 is equal to 0. So now we're going to need to figure out, one second, what our zeros are equal to. Let's make our table again. So q plus 3 is equal to 0. Q minus 3 is equal to 0. And 3q minus 5 is equal to 0. Start with the first one. Subtract 3 on both sides, leaving us with q minus is equal to negative 3. And here we gotta add 3 to both sides. So we're left with q is equal to 3. And the last one, 3q minus 5, add 5 to both sides. Leaving us with 3q is equal to 5. Divided by 3 on both sides. Q is equal to 5 over 3. And this will be the answers. Remember, if you have something equal to 0, that means we're going to need to figure out what q is equal to when y is equal to 0. Okay. Let's move on to number 16. For this one, we're going to look at the graph. And it looks like we can see some of the answers over here. We know that one of them, before we begin actually, how do we figure out what x is equal to? Well, the x coordinate that we need to figure out is when y is equal to 0. So anytime our graph crosses the x-axis, that's going to be our answer. So we have one answer there, one answer there. but we can't tell what the last point is. So we're going to need to use our equation to figure this out. Let's do this over here. So this will be number 16. We have y is equal to 6x to the power of 3 plus 14x to the power of 2 minus 40x. So to group this, we're going to need to figure out what the greatest common factor is. Once again, so what numbers can we take out of this? What is the biggest coefficient we can take out? What is the biggest variable that we can take out? From 6, 14, and 40, negative 40, the biggest we'd be able to take out is 2. And the biggest variable we'd be able to take out is this x over here. Sorry. So we're left with 2x. But now we need to divide 2x out of this entire equation that we have. So now, 6x to the power of 3 divided by 2x is 3x squared. 14x squared divided by 2x is 7x. And negative 40x divided by 2x is negative 20x. Oh, no. It should be negative 20. From here, we can now use the FOIL method to figure this out. So we need to do A times C on the top and B on the bottom. A times C is going to be 3 times negative 20, which is negative 60. And then we have to take the B out too, and that's 7. And from here, we need to figure out what two numbers multiply to get negative 60, but add up to 7. So go ahead, use the table and figure it out. And your answer is going to be positive 12 and negative 5. So now we can take this. Remember to keep the 2x again. And we have, rewrite your equation. Remember to bring down 3x squared. And now, this 7x is going to change to this. I'm going to do this in a different color actually too. Let me pick a different color. So this 7x is going to change into positive 12x minus 5x, and then minus 20. So now you should be familiar with this. We're going to group once again. So we're left with 2x, and let's group these together. Oh, let me change this. This one and this one. So what is the GCF of 3x squared and 12x? Just going to be 3x. So inside we are left with x plus 4. And then we need to work on the second piece now. Negative 5x minus 20. The GCF that we'd be able to take out would be negative 5. No x because 20 does not have a variable behind it. And notice that I took it out as negative 5 and not positive 5 because we want to get rid of this negative up here when we group it together. We don't want a negative x in the front. So here we're left with x plus 4, my bad. And once again, we can check our answer by looking at what's inside the parentheses. And since x plus 4 is definitely equal to x plus 4, we did our work correctly. And now we can group them together. 3x and minus 5 together, and x plus 4. And that will be the answer. And notice that the question asks where y is equal to 0, though. So to do this, we're going to need to set 2x. We're going to need to make y equal to 0. So this y is going to be equal to 0. So we create a table again. So we have 2x is equal to 0. We have 3x minus 5 is equal to 0. And x plus 4 is equal to 0. Divide 2 on both sides. And we're left with x is equal to 0. Add 5 on both sides, which leaves us with 3x is equal to 5. Divide by 3. And then we're left with x is equal to 5 over 3. And then on the right hand side we have x plus 4 is equal to 0. Subtract 4 on both sides. And we're left with x minus equals negative 4. And that will be the answer for that one. And if you look back, let's remember our answer was x equals 5 over 3. This was the one that we were having a difficult time solving from the graph alone, which looks pretty accurate to this one right here. Now let's move on to number 18. We have 5p to the power of 3 plus p2q minus 15pq minus 3q squared. Alright, let's try this one out. So once again, we're going to need to group. So let's figure out what the GCF is of this piece, and then figure out what the GCF is of that piece. The biggest that since p to the power of 2q does not have any coefficients in front of it other than 1, there are no numbers that we can take out. But if you look at the variables, we have p to the power of 3 and p to the power of 2. So the biggest variables that we'd be able to take out is p to the power of 2, leaving us with 5p plus q. And the second piece, we have negative 15pq minus 3q squared. The biggest, or the GCF that we'd be able to take out would be negative 3q. So here we're left with 5p minus q. And notice that I took out negative 3 here. We do not want a negative over here, so we take it out earlier. So from here, oh, I forgot to change this. This should be a plus q, not a negative q. Remember, when you take out a negative, the symbol changes as well. From here, we can now group, leaving us with p squared minus 3q and 5p plus q. Alright, and that's it for today.